Why is it very wet on one side of a mountain range?
It's much more wet on one side of a mountain than the other. Because of a process known as orographic precipitation. Orographic precipitation causes air to rise up the side of a mountain range and cool, creating storms. The storms deposit a great deal of precipitation on that side of the mountain and create a rain shadow effect on the opposite side of the range. The Sierra Nevada mountains are an excellent example of orographic precipitation. Because the mountains of the western Sierras receive considerable rainfall, far more than California's Central Valley, while the eastern Sierras of Nevada are quite dry.
Why are graves above the ground in Louisiana?
In Louisiana, the water level is so close to the surface of the ground that coffins, rather than being buried, are placed in tombs above ground to avoid the possibility of coffins floating out of place. A Louisiana cemetery looks like a miniature city with tombs and alleyways.
What is a hemisphere?
A hemisphere is half of the Earth. The Earth can actually be divided into hemispheres in two ways, by the equator and by the prime meridian, through Greenwich, England, at 0 degrees longitude and another meridian at 180 degrees longitude. Near the location of the international dateline in the western Pacific Ocean. The equator divides the Earth into northern and southern hemispheres. There are seasonal differences between the northern and southern hemispheres. But there is no such difference between the eastern and western hemispheres. 0 and 180 degrees longitude divide the Earth into the eastern, most of Europe, Africa, Australia, and Asia, and western, the Americas, hemispheres.
How did Julius Caesar fix the calendar?
For years, the Romans had been using a calendar based on lunar cycles. Since each lunar month is 29.5 days, 12 months only adds up to 354 days. But seasons do not follow a lunar cycle, they follow a solar one. A solar year lasts 365 days, 5 hours, 49 minutes. Julius Caesar implemented a solar calendar so that the seasons would occur at the same times every year. Additionally, Caesar made each year 365 days long, with every fourth year being 366 days long, a leap year. Unfortunately, each calendar year was still 11 minutes longer than a solar year. A problem that Caesar did not feel was a big concern at the time.
What is the largest island in the United States?
The island of Hawaii is the largest island in the United States at 4,021 square miles. 10,414 square kilometers. Puerto Rico is the second largest at 3,435 square miles, 8,897 square kilometers.
Due to wars with other European countries in the 17th and 18th centuries. Why is the Dead Sea dead?
Water in the Dead Sea is extremely salty, 9 times the saltiness of normal ocean water, and kills nearly all the plant and animal life that flows into the sea from the Jordan River. The Dead Sea lies on the border of Israel and Jordan and is the lowest land elevation on Earth, sinking to 1,378 feet, 420 meters, below sea level. Ottoman Empire began to decline and became known as the sick man of Europe. The empire's successor was Turkey, which became an independent country in 1922.
How does India's caste system work?
The caste system is the extremely rigid, hierarchical social class system of India. Based on the ancient Hindu text Law of Manu, the caste system consists of 4 categories: Brahmans, priests, Kshatriyas, warriors, Vaishyas, merchants, and Sudras, servants. There are many people who are considered to be outside of the caste system, or who have no caste, called the Harijans or untouchables. The untouchables serve the most menial jobs and live literally outside of the social class system. The caste system in India dictates not only one's profession, but also whom one can marry, social contacts, and all other aspects of life.
What is the difference between cultivation and domestication?
Cultivation is the deliberate attempt to sow and manage essentially wild plants and seed. Domestication is when people experiment and consciously select the right seeds to grow for various conditions.
How many Internet users are there in the United States?
There are more than 211 million Internet users in America, making up approximately 72.5% of the population. 15% of all Internet users in the world are located in the United States.
What was the Rwanda genocide?
The Rwanda genocide was the systematic killing of hundreds of thousands of people belonging to the Tutsi minority ethnic group by the majority Hutus. Most of the killing occurred within a span of 100 days in the summer. of 1994. It was carried out by two Hutu extremist military groups. At least 500,000 people were immediately killed. And as many as 1 million people lost their lives by the end of the massacre. The genocide had its roots in the Rwanda Civil War, which pitted the majority Hutus against the Uganda-supported Tutsi minority.
What is a strait?
A strait is a narrow body of water between islands or continents that connects two larger bodies of water. Two of the most famous straits are the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, and the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman.
What is Hadrian's Wall?
Hadrian's Wall was built under the direction of the Roman Emperor Hadrian in 122 C. Located in northern Great Britain, it was intended to keep out the Caledonians of Scotland. Built of mud and stone, the wall stretched nearly 75 miles, 120 kilometers. From Solway Firth in the west to the Tyne River in the east, near Newcastle.
What state has only one legislative body?
Nebraska has a unicameral legislature, all other 49 states have two houses.
What waterfall has the largest flow of water?
Niagara Falls, on the border of Canada and the United States between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, has 212,000 cubic feet, 6,000 cubic meters, of water flowing over its 173 and 182-foot high, 52.7–55.5 meter high, set of falls. There are two adjacent waterfalls.
What does the word geography mean?
The word geography is of Greek origin and can be divided into two parts. Geo, meaning the earth, and graphy, which refers to writing. So geography can be loosely translated to writing about the earth. Ancient geography was often descriptions of far-away places. But modern geography has become much more than writing about the earth. Contemporary geographers have a difficult time defining the discipline. Some of my favorite definitions include the bridge between the human and the natural sciences, the mother of all sciences, and anything that can be mapped.
Which Caribbean country leads the region in tourism?
The Dominican Republic is the Caribbean country most visited by tourists, attracting 1.5 million people annually. The beautiful beaches, clear seas, and tropical climate lure tourists from around the world, but especially from Europe. Jamaica is the second most visited Caribbean country, with 850,000 tourists annually.
What is the tallest dam in the world?
Tajikistan is home to the world's two tallest dams, Rogan and Nurek. Rogan is about 1,100 feet, 335 meters, tall, about 100 stories. And Nurek is about 985 feet tall, 300 meters. The United States' tallest dam, Oroville, in Northern California, is 16th on the world list at 755 feet, 230 meters.
What is the Commonwealth of Independent States?
The Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. Established by Russia just after the fall of the Soviet Union, is an organization that serves to keep the resources of the Soviet Union flowing between the now independent countries. 10 of the 15 former Soviet republics are members: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. The Republic of Georgia withdrew in 2006, and Turkmenistan withdrew in 2005.
Is Chicago really the Windy City?
Chicago is not the windiest city in the United States. Chicago's average wind speed of 10.4 miles (16.7 kilometers per hour) is beat by Boston, 12.5 (20.1). Honolulu, 11.3 (18.2), Dallas and Kansas City, both 10.7 (17.2), and especially in the true Windy City, MT. Washington, New Hampshire, 35.3 (56.8).
How dry is Antarctica?
Though Antarctica is covered with ice, it is the driest continent on the planet. The ice in Antarctica has been there for thousands of years, and the continent receives less than 2 inches. 5 centimeters of precipitation annually. The Sahara Desert receives 10 inches, 25 centimeters, each year.
When was daylight saving time instituted?
Though Benjamin Franklin suggested the concept of daylight saving time in 1784, it was not implemented in the United States until World War I. Between World Wars I and II, states and communities were allowed to choose whether or not to observe the change. During World War II, Franklin Roosevelt again implemented daylight saving time. Finally, in 1966, Congress passed the Uniform Time Act, which standardized the length of the daylight saving time period. But states and territories can choose not to observe daylight saving time. Arizona, Hawaii, parts of Indiana, Puerto Rico, and some island territories have chosen not to observe daylight saving time.
How many near-Earth objects is NASA tracking?
Approximately 1,100 near-Earth objects are tracked by NASA.
What is the problem with a calendar based on the cycles of the Moon?
The time between two new moons is 29½ days. After 12 lunar months, a calendar based on the cycles of the Moon falls short of a solar year and thus the cycle of seasons by 11.25 days. To compensate, the Hebrew calendar, which is based on the Moon cycle, has a regulated 19-year cycle in which an extra month is added every 2 or 3 years.
How was the New World divided between Spain and Portugal?
In 1493 Pope Alexander VI divided the New World into Spanish and Portuguese spheres of influence. A line was placed 100 leagues, about 300 miles 480 kilometers, west of the Azores Islands, located several hundred miles west of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean. Everything in the New World to the east of this demarcation line, which lay off the east coast of South America, belonged to Portugal, while the lands in the west belonged to Spain. Since this division provided little land for Portugal, the Portuguese were dissatisfied. The Treaty of Tordesillas established a new line about 800 miles. 1,300 kilometers, to the west of the old line. Pope Julius II approved the line in 1506.
Who is Osama bin Laden?
Osama bin Laden is a Saudi Arabian militant and the leader of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, the base in Arabic. Al-Qaeda is a Sunni Muslim organization that was created from veterans of the struggle against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. Bin Laden is the son of a wealthy Saudi Arabian family who made their fortune in the Saudi civil construction business. He was expelled from Saudi Arabia, moved to Sudan, and now is alleged to live in the border region between Afghanistan and Pakistan. He is thought to be the mastermind behind the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon in Virginia. Bin Laden used his personal wealth to fund Mujahideen insurgents in Afghanistan after the Soviet withdrawal in 1989, and he organized bombings against various American interests, including the American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya in 1998. He demands the end of foreign influence in Muslim countries and the creation of a new Muslim caliphate. He has been waging a jihad, holy war, although many Muslims say this is a misuse of the term, to achieve his aims through violence and the killing of both civilians and military personnel. Bin Laden is on the FBI's most wanted list. A reward of $25 million for information leading to his arrest has been offered.
What are the 7 Seas?
The 7 seas spoken of by mariners from long ago are oceans or parts of oceans. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans are so large that they were each divided into 2 seas. The Antarctic, Indian, and Arctic were also considered seas, thus totaling 7. If a sailor had sailed upon all 7 seas, he had sailed around the world. There are not just 7 but dozens of seas in the world.
What are some world weather records?
The following are some amazing weather records. The wettest, Cherrapunji, India, with 500 inches, 1,270 centimeters, of rainfall per year. The coldest, Antarctica, with a measurement of -129 degrees Fahrenheit, -89.4 degrees Celsius. The driest, Arica, Chile, which only receives 0.004 inches, 0.01 centimeters, of rainfall per year. And the hottest, Azizia, Libya, which has sizzled at 136 degrees Fahrenheit, 57.7 degrees Celsius.
When did the United States control the Philippines?
The Philippines were a Spanish colony until 1898, when the United States took control of the more than 700 islands at the close of the Spanish-American War. The islands remained under American control through 1946, except for a 2-year period of Japanese control during World War II. The Philippines became independent in 1946 and leased land to the United States for military bases until 1992. When the U.S. military presence in the Philippines ended,
Which Russian city is among the most expensive in the world?
Moscow is ranked 37th in the world, in terms of expensive cities to live in. It is just ahead of Singapore, Athens, Greece, and Caracas, Venezuela.
Why do some countries choose not to join the United Nations?
A country must be willing to give up some of its self-rule for the greater good, which often means the good of the larger, Western countries.
What is the difference between snow and hail?
Snow is water vapor that freezes in clouds before falling to the earth. Hail is water droplets, raindrops, that have turned to ice in clouds.
What should I do when a tornado approaches?
Try to get to the lowest level of the building, unless you are in a mobile home or outdoors, in which case you should seek a sturdy and safe shelter. Go to the center of the room and hide under a sturdy piece of furniture. Stay away from windows, hold onto the leg of a table or something else stable. And protect your head and neck with your arms.
Who rules Andorra?
Since 1278, the tiny country of Andorra, nestled in the Pyrenees between France and Spain, has been jointly ruled by two people who live outside the country: the President of France and the Bishop of La Ciudad Urgell in northeastern Spain. France and Spain jointly take responsibility for the defense of Andorra.
What are the 7 natural wonders of the world?
These include the Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights, Mt. Everest, on the border of China and Nepal, Victoria Falls, in eastern Africa. The Grand Canyon, USA, Great Barrier Reef, Australia, Paracutan, volcano in Mexico. And the harbor of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with its stunning topography.
How can I find the exact time?
Today, you can go to many websites on the internet and find the exact time. Just search the word time, and you will see links for the exact time. Your computer also is set to automatically update time, so your desktop time is usually accurate to within a few milliseconds.
Where was East Pakistan?
When the British left South Asia, they divided the region into India and Pakistan. Muslim regions in Pakistan were located to the east and west of Hindu India. These two separate territories became East and West Pakistan, and were separated by approximately 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers. Having been extremely geographically separated from West Pakistan for over 3 decades, East Pakistan declared independence and became Bangladesh in 1971.
What is Iceland's leading export?
Over 3/4 of Iceland's exports are fish. The fish industry employs 12% of the nation's workforce, and the country is economically vulnerable to fluctuations in world fish prices.
Who was Lech Walesa?
In 1970, Lech Walesa was one of the leaders of a shipyard workers' strike in Gdansk, Poland. Later, he organized workers in non-communist labor unions, arguing for improved conditions for workers. In 1980, he led the Gdansk shipyard strike, which ended with the government agreeing with his provisions on behalf of workers, including the right to strike and the right to form independent unions. The Catholic Church, which is very influential in Poland, supported his activities, including his formation of the Solidarity movement. Walesa was later elected President of Poland and served in office from 1990 to 1995.
How many automobiles are there in the United States?
There are approximately 151 million automobiles in use in the United States. About one car for every 2 people.
What is the difference between magma and lava?
Magma is hot, liquefied rock that lies underneath the surface of the earth. When magma erupts or flows from a volcano onto the Earth's surface, it becomes lava. There is no difference in substance, only the name changes.
What is the air made of?
The air near the Earth's surface is primarily nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen comprises 78% and oxygen 21%. The remaining 1% is mostly argon, 0.9%. A little carbon dioxide, 0.035%, and other gases, 0.06%.
What are the largest and smallest counties in the United States?
San Bernardino County in California is the largest, at 20,000 square miles, 51,800 square kilometers. It stretches from metropolitan Los Angeles to the Nevada/Arizona border. The smallest county in the United States is Kalawao, Hawaii, at 13 square miles. 33.7 square kilometers, which has a very small population of only 130.
Where is Gaul?
Gaul was an ancient country that included most of modern-day France. It is thought to have been settled by Celtic people from the north, as well as Balkan people from the east. Other empires took control of Gaul, and it eventually became the Kingdom of the Franks, the forerunners of the French.
Who decides where houses can be built?
Almost all American city governments have a department that is responsible for planning the layout of the city. The planning department for each city enforces and delineates zoning, which regulates the location of homes, businesses, factories, and even nuclear power plants.
What do the Cumberland Road and Cumberland Gap have to do with each other?
Absolutely nothing. The Cumberland Road is more than 100 miles, 161 kilometers, from the Cumberland Gap. The Cumberland Gap, which lies near the border of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia, is a pass through the Appalachian Mountains at the Cumberland Plateau. The name Cumberland was extremely popular in colonial America, originating in the name of the British Duke of Cumberland.
What's the difference between the old emergency broadcast system and the emergency alert system?
The Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, created in 1964 to warn the country of a national emergency such as nuclear attack, became the Emergency Alert Service, EAS. In 1997, the old EBS system relied on one primary radio station in each region to receive an emergency message and then broadcast it to the public and other media outlets. The new system, which also includes cable television, operates via computer and can be automatically and immediately broadcast to the public. It also allows additional local governmental agencies the opportunity to broadcast emergency messages. Future plans for the EAS include radios and televisions that will automatically turn on when an alert is announced.
How should we prepare for disaster?
Disasters can and do happen everywhere. You should prepare for disaster by having a disaster supply kit with supplies for you and everyone in your family available at home and work, as well as a mini kit in your automobile. It should include food, water, first aid equipment, sturdy shoes, an AM/FM radio with batteries kept outside of the radio, a flashlight, with batteries kept outside of the flashlight. Vital medication, especially prescription medication, blankets, cash, if the power and computers are down. Credit and ATM cards won't work, games and toys for children, and any other essentials. Contact your local chapter of the Red Cross for more information about disaster preparedness.
What is China's one-child rule?
In the late 1970s, the government of China decided that population control was needed because of a rapidly growing population that would soon outgrow the country's ability to feed itself. The policy mandated that every couple would only be allowed to have one child. The law exempts certain ethnic groups, rural families, and families where neither parent has no siblings. Punishment is strict and is primarily economic. China won't provide medical care or education funding for the second child. The one-child rule has been working and has slowed population growth, reducing the threat of overpopulation.
Why do mosques have domes?
The onion-shaped domes of Islamic mosques and other religious buildings of Eastern religions were an architectural style borrowed from the Byzantine Empire. One of the world's most famous onion-domed buildings, St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow's Red Square, was built in the mid-16th century.
When did Brazil move its capital city?
In 1960, Brazil moved its capital city from Rio de Janeiro to a brand new city in the center of the country, called Brasilia. Brasilia was designed and constructed on empty land near the center of the country in the 1950s. Brazil moved its capital from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia to assert its independence. Exchanging a colonial capital on the coast for a new interior capital. The interior, underdeveloped, location of the new capital allowed a fresh start as well as an opportunity to develop the region.
How can I determine the distance between two places by using a scale?
By using a ruler, compare the distance between 2 points on a map with the information on the scale to calculate the actual distances between the 2 points. For example, if you measure the distance between two towns as being 5 inches and the ratio says 1:100,000, then the actual distance between the towns is 500,000 inches, 7.9 miles, 12.7 kilometers.
Where is the Sun Belt?
The Sun Belt, known for its warm temperatures, is a geographical area that spreads across the southern and southwestern states of the United States. It has been an area of high population growth over the past few decades. As more families and individuals have moved to states like California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida.
What factors affect population growth?
Many factors affect the growth in population, including an increase in marital age, increasing education level, increased acceptance of the use of contraceptives in much of the world, wars and military action, and genocide.
How long have communists been in power in China?
China's Communist Revolution took place in 1949, and Mao Zedong became the country's first chairman. Communism has been the doctrine ever since.
How many official languages are there in South Africa?
The country has 11 official languages: Afrikaans, English, Ndeb, Pedi, Soto, Swazi, Xanga, Tswana, Venda, Xhosa, and Zulu.
What is Machu Picchu?
Machu Picchu is an ancient Incan city constructed at an elevation of 8,000 feet, 2,438 meters above sea level, and located about 43 miles, 69 kilometers, northwest of Cuzco in Peru. It was built by the Incan ruler Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui between 1460 and 1470. It is comprised of more than 200 buildings, which are visited by thousands of tourists each year. Tourists reach the city either by bus or by a ritualistic 20-mile hike to the summit. It was rediscovered by a Yale University team, headed by Hiram Bingham, in 1911. Some argue that other explorers may have discovered the site earlier, including a German businessman named Augusto Bern in the 1880s.
Which country is the world's leading copper producer?
Chile produces an astounding 20% of the world's copper annually, and contains approximately 1/4 of the world's copper reserves. The world's total copper production is 9.2 million metric tons. Thus Chile's production is 1.8 million metric tons.
How does the United Nations preserve peace?
Established in 1945 at the end of World War II. The United Nations was created for the purpose of maintaining world peace. Its members pledge to work together to solve disputes. The United Nations also oversees many agencies that promote health, welfare, and cooperation around the world.
What is the oldest known map drawn to scale?
In the 6th century BCE, the Greek geographer Anaximander created the first known map drawn to scale. His map was circular, included known parts of Europe and Asia, and placed Greece at its center.
What is Oceania?
Oceania is the region in the central and southern Pacific that includes Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, and the islands that compose Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia.
Is there a high risk of earthquakes in the Midwestern United States?
Great earthquakes struck the New Madrid, Missouri, area in 1811 and 1812. They caused considerable damage. Some areas experienced shaking at the level of 11 on the Mercalli scale, and were felt as far away as the East Coast. The potential exists for future earthquakes in the region, since earthquakes have occurred there before. Planning and preparedness continues throughout the region. Centered at the junction of Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi.
What was the Oregon Trail?
The Oregon Trail was a 2,000-mile long, 3,200-kilometer long pioneer trail that extended from Independence, Missouri, to Portland, Oregon. Migrants traveled along this trail in an effort to reach and settle the sparsely populated American West. It took migrants approximately 6 months to traverse the Oregon Trail and reach Oregon. The trail was heavily used from the 1840s and subsequent decades. Portions of the trail are still visible today in places such as the Whitman Mission National Historic Site in Washington.
What was apartheid?
South Africa's legalized form of racial discrimination was known as apartheid, separateness. and it classified individuals into one of four ethnic groups: white, black, colored, mixed race, and Asian. Apartheid laws limited where different groups could live and where they could work. Apartheid was repealed in 1990.
What country in Africa has the world's highest minimum elevation?
Lesotho, located in the mountains of South Africa, has an absolute minimum elevation of 4,530 feet. 1,381 meters, above sea level in the valley of the Orange River. But almost all of the land in the country lies above 6,000 feet, 1,829 meters.
How many Native Americans were killed during the period of European colonization in the Americas?
The great majority of Native Americans who had made what is now America their home for tens of thousands of years were killed outright by European colonists. Diseases brought to the Americas from Europe, including smallpox and the plague, also decimated the indigenous tribes. Furthermore, intertribal warfare, spurred on by the political interests of Europeans, enslavement, and the mass killing and forced relocation in the 19th century of the hundreds of thousands of Native Americans who still managed to survive all conspired to nearly destroy native tribes and their cultures.
What is the largest city in Siberia?
Located in southern Siberia and on the Trans-Siberian Railroad route, Novosibirsk is the largest city in Siberia, with a population of 1.4 million.
In which direction does the west wind blow?
It blows from the west to the east. Wind is named after the direction from whence it comes.
How thick is the Earth's crust?
The thickness of the Earth's crust varies at different points around the planet. Under continents, the crust is approximately 15 miles, 24 kilometers thick, but under the oceans it is a mere 5 miles, 8 kilometers, thick.
What is the Terracotta Army?
Located in Xi'an, China, in Shanxi province, which was once the capital of the Chinese Empire for 13 dynasties. The Terracotta Army is one of the great archaeological finds of the 20th century. It was discovered by two farmers who were drilling for water in 1974. In the 3rd century BCE, the very first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, United China. Established the longest-running form of government, built the Great Wall, and built his own elaborate tomb. As a symbol of his rule and to guard himself in the afterlife. Qin Shi Huang had an entire army replicated approximately 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 15 cavalry horses. All life-size and each with distinct facial expressions to guard the first emperor's mausoleum at Mtili in Xi'an, China.
What is the world's second longest barrier reef?
The second longest barrier reef in the world lies just off the Atlantic coast of Belize. On the northeastern corner of Central America, and consists of Lighthouse Reef and Glover's Reef. Belize's reefs are only a few dozen miles long while the Great Barrier, the longest reef in the world, is hundreds.
Why was there a Russian outpost in California?
Established in 1812, Fort Ross was a Russian outpost located in what is now Sonoma County, California. The outpost was started so that Russian fur traders could explore and exploit the area. A Russian presence was maintained at the fort until 1841.
Can a woman have multiple husbands?
While some cultures allow men to have multiple wives, there are other cultures that allow women to have multiple husbands. This practice, known as polyandry, is presently observed by only two cultures: the Tibetans and the Nair people of southwestern India. Polygyny, when men have multiple wives, remains legal in Islamic and many African countries. The collective name for multiple spouses, both polyandry and polygyny, is polygamy.
Why is it more likely to rain in a city during the week than on the weekend?
Urban areas have an increased likelihood of precipitation during the work week because intense activity from factories and vehicles produce particles that allow moisture in the atmosphere to form raindrops. These same culprits also produce warm air that rises to create precipitation. A study of the city of Paris found that precipitation increased throughout the week and dropped sharply on Saturday and Sunday.
What are the different kinds of clouds?
There are dozens of types of clouds, but they can all be classified into three main categories: cirriform, stratiform, and cumuliform. Cirriform clouds are feathery and wispy, they are made of ice crystals and occur at high elevations. Stratiform clouds are sheet-like and spread out across the sky. Cumuliform clouds are the ubiquitous cloud, puffy and individual. They can be harmless or they can be the source of torrential storms and tornadoes.
How big is the area of the North Pole ice region?
The Arctic ice mass covers an area of 1.59 million square miles, 4.1 million square kilometers.
Where is the Bible Belt?
The Bible Belt, a region noted for its high proportion of fundamentalist Christian beliefs, is located in the southern and midwestern United States, running from about Oklahoma to the Carolinas.
Where is the Rust Belt?
The Rust Belt is a term used to describe the United States' declining manufacturing region of the Northeast and Midwest. Factory closures, especially those of steel and textile mills, have resulted in massive unemployment and declining population in Rust Belt cities. The Rust Belt runs from about Minnesota to Massachusetts.
Who owns Antarctica?
Though Antarctica is a cold, icy, barren territory, 7 countries claimed portions of it in the early 20th century. All of these claims were defined by lines of longitude, and problems arose as many of these claims overlapped. In 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was established, proclaiming that no additional claims could be made upon Antarctica and that the continent would be used solely for scientific purposes.
How did Cuba become a communist country?
Having been an independent country for 57 years, the Cuban government, run by the dictator Fulgencio Batista y Salvador, fell to the communist leader Fidel Castro in 1959. Because of Cuba's communist government, the United States severed its relationship with Cuba, forcing the island to ally itself with the Soviet Union. In October 1962, the presence of this nearby communist country caused extreme terror in the United States when the USSR attempted to place nuclear missiles within Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis is thought to be the closest the Cold War ever got to a real nuclear war.
Who is the biggest producer of oil in Europe?
Norway wins as Europe's biggest oil producer, producing approximately 3.2 million barrels per day. The United Kingdom and Denmark are the second and third biggest oil producers in Europe.
What was Seward's folly?
Seward's Folly, also known as Seward's Icebox, was the derogatory nickname given to the area known as Alaska. Purchased by the United States from Russia in 1867. The $7.2 million purchase, heavily encouraged by Secretary of State William Seward, was criticized by many, thus dubbed Seward's Folly. The Alaskan gold rush of 1900 proved Seward to be a very wise man. In 1959, Alaska became the 49th state.
What was the Rainbow Warrior?
In 1985, the Greenpeace ship Rainbow Warrior was in the Auckland, New Zealand harbor when it exploded and sank, killing one Greenpeace staff member. It was later discovered that French secret agents planted bombs on board the Rainbow Warrior. In order to stop the organization from protesting French nuclear weapon tests in the Pacific. Following the incident, the French Minister of Defense and head of the Secret Service were forced to resign. New Zealand, a country very much opposed to nuclear weapons, maintained a poor relationship with France for many years following the bombing.
What happens when I cross the international date line?
If you fly, sail, or swim across the international date line from east to west, such as from the United States to Japan, you add a day, Sunday becomes Monday. When you travel from west to east, such as from Japan to the United States, you subtract a day, Sunday becomes Saturday.
What are the Balkan states?
The Balkan states and the Baltic states are two completely different regions. The countries lying on the Balkan Peninsula are commonly referred to as the Balkan states, or the Balkans. The Balkan Peninsula itself lies between the Adriatic Sea, east of Italy, and the Black Sea. The countries on the peninsula include Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Macedonia, Romania, Serbia and Montenegro, Slovenia, and the portion of Turkey that lies in Europe.
What is the world's most commonly spoken language?
Over 1 billion people around the world speak Mandarin, the official language of China. Other languages spoken in China include Cantonese, which is spoken by 71 million people. Wu, Shanghaiese, spoken by 70 million, and other minority languages such as Minbei, Fuzhou, Minnan, Hokkien Taiwanese, Xiang, Gan, and Hakka dialects.
What playwright and author became president of an Eastern European country?
Czech poet and author Václav Havel was both the last president of Czechoslovakia. 1989 to 1992, and the first president of the Czech Republic, 1992 to 2003. He has won numerous literary awards for his works, as well as the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor bestowed by the President of the United States to a civilian.
What criteria must an area meet to be considered an independent state?
State must be an independent country with its own land, government, permanent population, transportation system and economy, and it must have international recognition.
Why is Coney Island called an island even though it's not?
Though now a peninsula of Long Island, Coney Island was actually an island at one time. The popular amusement park of the early 20th century is now attached to Long Island due to the silting up of Coney Island Creek, which once separated the two islands.
Is the Middle East a desert?
Actually, very little of the region is filled with sand dunes and sandstorms. Coastal areas are temperate, and several areas boast very pleasant and moist Mediterranean climates. A lack of water is a problem for agriculture throughout the region. So countries are experimenting with technological solutions such as desalination plants and drip agriculture for water conservation.
What did Marco Polo note in his journals about the Chinese fleet, when he arrived in the 13th century?
Marco Polo noted that Chinese ships had crews of more than 300, cabins for 60 people, and 4 sailing masts.
Can you ski in New Zealand?
New Zealand's South Island is famous for having some of the best skiing in the Southern Hemisphere. The centre of New Zealand skiing is Queenstown, which is a few hours by plane from capital city, Auckland. Ski season is July through September, when winter hits the countries of the southern latitudes.
How is the Earth's surface like an orange peel?
LL attempts to represent a sphere, like the Earth, in a flat representation result in distortions. The Earth's surface is like an orange peel. If one were able to peel an orange in one piece and then try to flatten the peel, Cracks and tears would appear. Attempting to peel the earth and then lay that information on a flat surface in a map creates these same open areas. Map makers attempt to create maps that represent the spherical Earth with as little distortion as possible. The various strategies for this are called projections.
How do sand dunes move?
Sand dunes are created and transported by wind. Wind blows sand from the windward side of the dune to the opposite side, slowly transporting it across the landscape.
Which country has a flag of only a single color and no design or emblem?
The Libyan flag is green without a design. This North African country is located between Egypt and Algeria and has a population of over 6 million people.
What is a delta?
A delta is a low-lying area where a river meets the sea. Often, the river divides into many tributary streams, forming a triangular-shaped area. The river deposits a large amount of sediment at its mouth, creating excellent soil for farming once the channel of the stream moves. One of the most famous deltas is where the Nile River meets the Mediterranean Sea. Other major deltas include the Mississippi River Delta in Louisiana, the Ganges River Delta in India, and the Yangtze Delta in China. The word delta comes from the Greek letter delta, referring to its triangular shape when written.
How high is tree line?
Tree lines vary, depending on where they are in the world and how close they are to a geographic pole. Trees stop growing in mountain regions from around 2,600 feet, 800 meters. In places such as Sweden, to over 17,000 feet, 5,200 meters, in the Andes Mountains in Bolivia.